All right. 10 o'clock. Everybody ready to get going? Calgary, please let me know if you can see me and or hear me. That'd be great. Awesome. Hello. Welcome to week 4. What do you think of this week versus the previous weeks? I'm going to ask every week.
Easier at the beginning, more difficult as I go on.
Easier at the beginning, more. It's Tuesday.
It is. Tuesdays are the worst days.
Okay. Okay. We're not even 40% of the way done the week yet. Okay. Oh, awesome. Thank you, Calgary. Fantastic. What do you prefer what you're doing this week to what you did in like week 1, week 2, to a lesser extent week 3? You don't know yet? No? You know already? No. Okay. Interesting. Do any of you have, well, presumably you have non-technical people in your life. Have you been telling them about Lighthouse and what you're doing? Were you able to tell them about week 1 to 3 without any kind of like, this means that I also, but that's cool because, did you have to explain a bunch of stuff? A lot, right? Yeah. Yes. But you're getting to the point where you can actually start showing them something. You can actually build websites and show them, right? We're moving like week 1, week 2, week 3, we're working exclusively in Node. Everything was server side. You're creating APIs and stuff, and you're like, if you're like me, you're telling your friends, hey, you know, I made this endpoint. Users can log in. They can go to /login, and people are like, what's an API? That's great. I always wanted to start a blog called No One Cares About Your API. Because when I was kind of learning on my own, doing self-guided stuff, I was also managing a warehouse. So I would bring my employees in, and I'd say, look what I did on the weekend. Look at this. And they'd be like, I don't care. And I'd be like, you're fired if you don't look. Just look. Give me some kind of feedback. But a lot of people tend to like this swing that we're doing now, where you can actually start showing your friends and family, like, hey, here's an app that I built. Here's something functional in a browser. Check it out. This is something you can kind of understand, but not really. So this week, we are extending what we already know about JavaScript, and we're moving to client-side JavaScript. And this lecture is about, the first half of this lecture, hopefully, is about the differences and similarities between programming server-side with JavaScript and programming client-side with JavaScript. And then the second half of this lecture will be to introduce a new library. Probably not new to everybody, but new to a lot of people, this library jQuery. And we'll talk about what we use jQuery for. But I want to get started by talking about what the differences and similarities are between what we've been doing and what we're doing now. So why don't we do a side-by-side comparison? I'm in Compass here. I'm just going to hit Command-Option-I. Everybody's familiar with the dev tools at this point? Cool, I'm just going to make this nice and big. And on this side, I have our trusty terminal. So I'm just going to pop into the REPL at first, and we see that we have, like, you know, the classic 1+1. Hello world. Right? We would expect, hey, there we go. Does anybody know why it prints undefined there? Does everybody know why it prints undefined? That's the function return value, exactly. Console log doesn't have a return, so it's implicitly undefined. Cool. So presumably, we can also do this over here. Let me make this a little bigger. 1+1. Hey, oh, check it out. We also get the instant preview. How cool is that, right? And then presumably we can also do something like console log. Seems pretty much the same, right? We even got this undefined back again. Awesome. Well, what if we did something a little more elaborate? Let's vim into, we'll call this process. Okay, so I'm just going to console log process.argv. What does argv give us? It'll give you whatever commands you give to the terminal, right? So if I run node process.js, we see that the first argument was node, and the second argument was the path to the file that was running. And obviously, if we gave another argument or two, then those are added on, right? But we got used to this process.argv. We have the ability to, so what is process? If I go back in here, what does this process represent? Any guesses? I mean, look at what we were able to get back. Sorry, somebody said it. Node. That's exactly what it is. The process is node. It's the running process. That's why we can access the arguments that were passed into node when it was started up. Okay, and we can access things like environment variables, which you'll see all the time. Process.env. If you haven't seen that yet, you will. Okay, cool. Let's try that out in the browser. Process is not defined because we're not actually, I mean, this might be obvious, but we're not actually running Node in the browser. It's a completely different ecosystem. Does anyone know what Node is? Have I talked to you about what Node is? Have any of the lecturers talked to you about what Node actually is? No. Awesome. Does anyone want to hazard a guess at what Node is? And I'll give you a hint. It's owned by Google, and Google created Chrome. Sorry? Yes. So for Calgary, the answer is that Chrome's JavaScript interpreter is known as V8. Has everybody heard of the V8 engine? Okay. It's just Chrome's version. There's also things like SpiderMonkey and stuff like that for different browsers. But Chrome pulled the V8 engine out of the browser and put it into a process called Node. It's the same interpreter. But I think we have talked about this. There's things that web servers do that browsers don't, and things that browsers do that web servers don't. So that's why we don't have the same things like don't have process in the browser because we don't have a running process. So we brought in other packages, right? We had to bring in like the net package, right? In week 2 to play the SNEC game to start that. Hopefully Calgary, you did that as well. We had to bring in other packages, right? But we were able to set up an HTTP server, set up a TCP server. Those are things we can't do in the browser. Browsers were never meant to run servers. So we don't have access to any of that in here. But we do have access to a ton more stuff. So instead of process, which we're going to have to give up, we have access to the window object. Yes. So the window object represents literally, oh, spoilers, literally the tab in the browser. It literally represents this window that's open right now. And I can access this. You get a little spoiler down here. What do you guess this is? It looks like it has a class, and then an opening curly, and then what looks like key value pairs. So what is window? I think I already said it. It's an object, actually. It's an instantiation of a class. We'll talk about classes later on in bootcamp, but that means that I can access properties with period. And what's cool about the browser is it just gives you all of this stuff. Nima loves to just loop through here and just be like, oh, what do you think autocomplete is? Or, ooh, the battery manager. That sounds like something fun, right? Ooh, some kind of function. So if you were, when you were bringing in packages and stuff in Node, we used something called NPM, right? I've taken you to a very specific NPM page. But we use something like NPM, right? Noisy pterodactyl melodies. Nice. They gave up the pumpkin because it's no longer October. Nan and Paneer Makani. Nasty popsicle machine. Nutty programming, man. New patch merge. I like it. Okay. So if you wanted to look something up, you'd go into here, right? You'd look for like cookie session. And then we go into here and we'd be able to look stuff up. Great. Okay, I want to look for window. Doesn't seem to be doing the same thing. We need to look somewhere else for our documentation. And a great source for that is what's known as the Mozilla Developer Network. There we go, if I can spell. Sorry, I know that's tiny. Hey, otherwise known as MDN. So you'll hear us talk about MDN quite a bit. If you want to know what something does in here, if we want to look at the battery manager, let's just do a search for MDN battery manager. Cool. Hey, somebody's already visited that. Amazing. Okay, awesome. Obsolete. That's always good to see. The battery manager interface provides ways to get information about the system's battery charge level. Interesting. Navigator.getBattery. Huh. That's interesting that we came to battery manager, which we saw lived on the window object, and yet we're actually going to do something like this. Ooh. Promises. Neat, right? So what's interesting about the browser is it will actually resolve your promise for you. It'll actually just sit here until the promise is resolved, and then we can see what's going on. Hey, look at that. Charging time, infinity. Cool. Current level, 0.82. That checks out. 82%. Notice that I didn't have to give any kind of special permission to the browser to do this. This is something that you have access to. You have access to a lot of creepy stuff in the browser. You have access to the history of the window that's open. You have access to its width and its height. You have access to things like the battery level. Maybe you're going to make a Chrome plugin that says, hey, you're at 10%, don't forget to plug in. Something like that. A plugin that tells you to plug in. This is why I don't come up with app ideas. I just implement other people's. Charging is false. We have access to all kinds of stuff. Let's see if we have navigator.geolocation. Oh, that sounds fun. Ooh, it's some kind of object. So let's dig a little deeper. Get current position. That sounds fun. What is that? Okay, it's some kind of function. Uncaught type error. Failed to execute get current position on geolocation. 1 argument required. Okay. Ooh, check it out. Callback. Isn't that awesome? Okay, so let's throw in a callback. We'll just do something like this, and presumably it's going to give us some data because we're making a get to something, right? Okay, cool. And let's do what we always do with data. We're not going to consume it in any way. We're just going to write it to the console. Ooh, we got an undefined down here. That's the return value. But up here, it says that compass.lighthouselabs.ca wants to know my location. Have you ever seen apps that ask to know your location? Let's allow that. And then we sit. Hey, callback resolved. There we go. We get the accuracy, whatever that number means. And then we have a latitude and a longitude. And look at this floating point number completely erroring out here. This is fantastic. But you can actually, given the user's permission for this one, you can actually get their latitude and longitude, and you could have it call a taxi cab or recommend restaurants in the area or log how many steps they've taken. We have access to all of this stuff right in the browser. What other cool stuff do we have access to? You can actually just put in a random word like B. Random word like B. There you go. Bluetooth. Bluetooth devices. It doesn't like that. Some kind of constructor. I'm willing to bet that it's on. Ooh, it's on that one as well. And there was a UUID. What does UUID stand for? Sorry? It is. It's a universally unique identifier. Hey, that's another function as well. Awesome. This is very cool. What about, gamepads? Do you know that your browser has native gamepad support? It can support up to 4 connected controllers. So you can actually Bluetooth with a Xbox controller or a PlayStation 4 controller into your MacBook. And then maybe use that in your final project. maybe. Who would be weird enough to do that? But yeah, we actually have this natively now. Remember what I said? I think I told you this. We're in the golden age of web development right now. It's never been easier or more exciting than it is right now. So this is all very well and good, but what can we do with JavaScript in the browser? We can obviously retrieve a whole bunch of information. At some point, we're going to get to editing web pages, but I just want to show you what's possible. And I got this from Travis. This is done. Travis didn't do this, by the way. He just shared the link. This is 100% JavaScript. It's listening for the mouse click, and then it's manipulating using fluid dynamics, fluid around in the page. And you could practice like your barista skills, like make a little tree or something. Okay. Anyway, that's also why I'm not a barista, although I've always wanted to be. So if anybody's hiring or know someone who's hiring, okay, cool. So this is really spectacular, right? This is impossible? Magic? Is this something that you can do? Ah, awesome. I heard a yes. Is there anyone who thinks no? Is there anyone who thinks this is impossible? This is completely beyond me. There's no way that I can do this. Awesome. That's fantastic. I don't have to give you a pep speech. This is great. Awesome. Could someone just say, no, that looks impossible. That's way too hard. Oh, never say that. Never say that. No, this is one of the really interesting things about getting into tech is that nothing is beyond you. Nothing. The things that you learn right now, how to step-by-step work your way through a problem, how to read documentation, how to become familiar with the unfamiliar, all of that step-by-step can lead to this. It can lead to anything that you can imagine. There's nothing that's impossible. Okay? In other fields or industries, there may be things that are impossible. Not for you. They're difficult. I'm not going to say this isn't hard. I'm not going to say this is going to take more than an hour or two. Or isn't going to take more than an hour or two. But this is not beyond you. And I'm going to demonstrate that right now because this is the GitHub page for the Fluid Simulator. I just navigated to a blank screen and then jiggled my mouse on it. This is what you paid to listen to. Okay, so script.js, check it out. Does anything here look familiar? As I scroll through this. What are we doing here? We're creating an array, presumably that's going to get reassigned at some point, called pointers. Here's one called splat stack. I wonder what the splat stack does. That seems pretty cool. And then we're going to push something in. Ooh, ES6 destructuring, right? There's nothing here that you don't already know the basics of. This is a function that accepts a canvas argument, and then it does things with that. It creates an object inside of here. There's more objects or variables being instantiated. Here's yet more functions. So yeah, it's one or two lines of code. It's only about 1,600 lines of code. Your final projects will probably be around there, if not more. But this is just JavaScript. So if you can do this, surely you can get someone's login information out of a form or something like that, right? Cool. Okay. So there's another thing that we have in here. Let's just clear this. We have access to a special object called document. And document has a bunch of different stuff in it. It's weird that it has this jQuery method. Don't really know what's going on there, but we have a location, we have a constructor, we have a URL. Ooh, what do you think document URL is? Hey, that's the URL of the page that I'm on. That might be handy, right? To know where your users are. What else do we have? Do we have maybe, ooh, we do. We have a body. Check it out. That's the body of the page. And do we have maybe a head? Hey, look at all the styles and scripts and links. Look at all this stuff coming in. Meta information, title, compass, day, week 4, day 2. Pretty neat, right? So we need to talk about how we can manipulate a web page. Because what have we been doing so far? Have you done any kind of web page manipulation so far? TinyApp did not, right? Because TinyApp used EJS, and EJS was server-side rendered, right? Server-side rendered means that it took your template, and it took your template vars, and played the Mad Lib game with them, interpolated them into there, created a static file, and then served it. So every time you wanted something to happen, you had to send another request to the server, right? You wanted to add a new URL? Great. You make a post request, then you redirect the user, they make a get request, and they see another page, right? JavaScript was not involved in there on the client side at all, okay? We were just using pure HTML. Was there any CSS? I think you brought in Bootstrap. But there was no front-end JavaScript, right? So we need to be able to manipulate the things that are in this, on this web page right here. And the way that we do that, let's go over here. Hey, okay. So I'm going to remove these extra line breaks just so I can get everything on the page. This is my website. This is my index.html page, okay? This should be pretty familiar. Open and closing HTML tags, right? That encompasses everything on the page. Then we have a head section where I've included the title, my page. Then we have a body. We have an H1, a div with a class. Then we have a p tag, an unordered list, and some list items with some Latin in them. Awesome. I see that everyone is blown away. This is great. Okay, so we're going to copy the path, and then we're going to open this up in the browser. That probably came as no surprise. My page up here, because that was what was in the head, and then an H1 with a P and an unordered list. Seems pretty normal, right? So what happens is, I'm just going to move this so I don't have to slide back and forth, but JavaScript can't interact with this page. The way that EJS worked was it literally parsed your file. It walked through your file line by line looking for something that looked like this or like this, in which case it said, okay, I need to replace all of this with some kind of string and continue on. Okay? It walked line by line through your file, but that would be a real pain if we had to walk line by line through this and literally parse the index.html document. So what the browser does, and we can take a look at elements here. I'll make this a little smaller. Okay, you've probably all seen this, right? What's in here? And you can explore looking at these things. And there is all of our web page. But the browser doesn't actually think about your web page like this. It actually has a little engine inside of it, and little probably meaning hundreds of thousands of lines of code, that turns this into something that we can use, that we can interact with, okay? And it turns your HTML into something called the DOM, the Document Object Model. Okay, so what's special about the DOM? It is, have you done any reading about the DOM? A little bit? Okay, so what kind of data structure is the DOM? You probably read about it last week. It's a tree. Yeah, very cool. So you remember the web page here? I have actually represented it as a tree structure. Is that big enough for everybody? Okay, so this is the way that the browser thinks about your web page. It thinks about it as parent nodes and child nodes and the connections between them. So if we look at this from the top level, we see that we have a parent node right up at the top, HTML. It seems to be the parent or grandparent of everything else on the page. Does that track with what we have here? We have HTML that wraps the entire thing, right? Inside of that, we have a head and a body. Okay, so we have a head and a body inside of our HTML. Inside of the head, we have a title with some text inside of it. Yep. There we go. My page. Inside of the body, We have an h1 that says welcome to my page. Then we have a div with a class attached to it. And so inside of this node, the DOM says, okay, I have a div and it has a class, but it also has children. It has two children, a p tag and an unordered list. And then the unordered list also has children. So trees are a special type of graph. Graphs are a collection of nodes that are connected in some way to each other. A tree is a special type of graph in that each node can have an unlimited number of children and siblings, but it can only have one parent. And that's how we structure our code here, right? We couldn't say that there's two parents for this p tag. That wouldn't make sense. How would I give it another parent? If I wrapped it in something, it would just become, div would become the grandparent of that. And the p would still be a descendant, okay? So this is what the DOM is. It's a special type of data structure that holds all of the nodes of the web page. And you learned about CSS yesterday, right? Or started to? Cool. Let's add some style to this page. Save that. Move into here. Let's, oh, where's my, let's touch styles.css. Awesome. So we have styles.css. How do we style something on the page? Using tags, classes, and IDs. Is there anything on here that we could use to hook into the DOM and change the style of? Sure, why don't we try grabbing the body? So how would I grab the body? And then curly braces. Let's say this is going to be a very good, let's go with something like, what's everybody's favorite color that's not super in your face? Dark salmon? Yeah, everybody wants to see a web page with a dark salmon background. And we'll make the font color, is there no chocolate? Oh, it'll be color, right? Ah, there is a chocolate. Awesome. Dark salmon and chocolate. Yes. I also cater on the weekends. Okay, let's take a look at what our page looks like now. Oh. Oh, where's my dark salmon and chocolate? I need to link into it, don't I? Link, relationship, style sheet, href equals, thank you, and self-closing tag. Okay, cool. Let's try this again. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. So, coder or barista? I'm not really sure which way I should go. I love this. This is so nice. If you're looking for midterm project colors, come to me. I also do fonts. Okay? Awesome. So, we were able to grab hold of the body somehow, right? The fact that we have this in a DOM means that programming languages can now interact with it. They can grab specific pieces of it and do things to it. Because is CSS a programming language? So there you have it. CSS is a domain-specific declarative programming language. We tell it with selectors to grab this particular element in the DOM and apply these styles to it, right? So what else can we hook into if we take a look at our DOM example here? We have classes, right? We could grab something with a class. So we could do div.content, right? We could say grab a div with a class of content. We could also, if that was unique enough, just style the content. If it wasn't unique at all, we could say, well, body div would be really kind of weird, but you could specify the parent if you wanted. Okay, so what do we want to do to our content? I'm thinking 2 pixel dashed magenta. Yes. Yes. If you don't give me suggestions, I'm just gonna keep going. Okay, let's see where we're at now. Oh yeah. Oh, but you know what we need though? This is Web 2.0. We're going to need border radius. That's right. Border radius, 4 pixels. That sounds good. Hey, there we go. Rounded corners, no sharp edges on this website. So we're able to already grab these things and start manipulating them, right? Wouldn't it be cool if we could do something like that with JavaScript? Well, we remember we could make reference to the document, right? And, ooh, it has a bunch of gets in here. Get element by ID. That sounds like fun. What IDs do we have on this page? We have an ID of main list. Cool. So let's grab that. Main list. Ooh. It gave us back the entire UL. And if we look at it, we're able to highlight and hover over it, right? I wonder if we could do something like ooh, very cool. Main list. I wonder how we would do something like add HTML DOM node. Append child. That sounds like fun. Document.create element. Ooh, we've got to create an element first. We could create a new LI. That sounds like fun. Something that we want to do, right? Come on. Give it to me. Yeah, this looks like fun. Actually, we can take all of this and let's see what happens. So we are going to... This is going to be really weird, isn't it? There we go. Okay, so we're going to create a new LI with document.createElement, LI. So, as the comment says, creates a new LI. Then we're going to create a text node, document.createTextNode, and water's probably fine. I don't like this capitals. There we go. So we're going to create a text node with the text water inside of it. So each of one of these, if we look at this, anything that has content inside of it has a subnode, a child node called the text node. And that's actually where the text lives. So the H1 has a text node that says, welcome to my page. And the title has a text node of my page. And these LIs all have text nodes associated with them. So if we want to create a new LI, we don't just create the LI, we also create a text node to go along with it. There are way easier ways to do this. I just want to show you that we can manipulate the DOM right now, okay? Cool, so we're going to create one called water, and then we're going to take we change this to LI, and we're going to append a child onto it, and that child is going to be this text node of water. And then we're going to get element by ID, main list, and we're going to append our LI onto there. And fingers crossed. Copy and paste code always works, right? First time. Da-da-da. Yeah. And imagine we wanted to do that again. Oh, it doesn't like LI. LI has already been declared. Cool. So we could continue on, presumably adding new elements. And presumably we could also remove child JavaScript. Remove child. Grab the list, whatever it is, and remove it. Oh, we have access to a child nodes. Very cool. Okay, so we have our main list, right? I'm just going to clear this. There we go. We have our main list, and we have something called child nodes in it. Very cool. An array. What looks like an array, it's actually a node list. It's a special type of object in the DOM. But we do have the ability to do things like child nodes dot for each. And then we could for each over all of them and maybe change their style. I don't know why you'd want to change the style from this, but you might want to. Or their content or something like that. We can grab these items. I always find this interesting because you know when you start writing a whole bunch of code and everybody tells you if you write too much code, you're probably doing something wrong. And then you look at a DOM element and it's got all of this information on every single one on the page. It has every single style that can be associated with it and whether or not it has a value. It has the local name. It's got the namespace. It's got, is it editable? Can you edit it? It's got a first child of text with the data of dollar. Ooh, it even knows about siblings, if it had any. But then we get to a bunch of these ons. How are we doing for time? 10:36. Calgary still good? Then we have all of these ons. Does anybody know what ons might point to? Sorry? Sorry, one more time. The mouse or the click, yeah, on mouse up, on mouse move, on mouse leave. They are events. They're absolutely events. And this is whether or not there's an event handler registered with that component. And we see that we don't actually have anything. So when the mouse moves over top of this page, nothing happens. I bet we can change that. Clear? There we go. So why don't we say document.body.on mouse move. Set it equal to a callback. And our callback is actually going to get something that we haven't looked at yet. It's actually going to be past the event object. And let's take a look at that first. So let's console log our event and see what we have access to whenever the mouse moves. So I said, look inside the document. So that's everything on this page, the entire DOM. Get the body and register an event listener that has a callback. This callback fires every time a mouse moves over top of the body. We're going to console log something. Awesome. And now, every time the mouse moves, we're console logging an event. Let's take a look at this event. This particular event is a mouse event. It has, does it bubble up? Yes, that's true. Is it canceled? No. Is it cancelable? Yes. Okay. What else might we be interested in? Oh, I bet there's X and Y coordinate. That might come in handy. So why don't we change our event to console log event X and event Y. There's no way this is going to get annoying. There's no way at all. Let's clear this and ooh, yeah. Huge applause, Calgary, by the way. Massive applause. How might this come in handy? I mean, I'm just showing you that we can do this right now, but how might this come in handy? Being able to listen to the X and Y coordinates. Sorry? Yeah, exactly. JavaScript. We could listen for where a mouse pointer is, maybe over top of an image or something. Maybe we have an interactive image, and if you're within this 20 by 20 square and you click on it, something happens. Or if you hover over it, maybe it magnifies or something like that. But we can listen to all of this. Or it draws pictures in the water at that coordinate. Exactly. Thank you. Awesome. So we can do things like this. We can attach event listeners. And there are, as we can see, if we look at the ons, there are an absolute ton of events in the browser. Let's see if we can do MDN DOM events. Resource events, error, abort, load, before load, unload. Network events, is the network online or offline? Focus events, has an element received focus. Does everybody know what that is? It's when you click onto something, like click into a text field or something. Blur, when has it lost focus? Okay, WebSocket events, you haven't dealt with WebSockets yet, I don't think. CSS animation events, animation start, animation end. CSS transition, form events, reset or submit. We're familiar with the submit event, right? Printing, viewing events, clipboard events, keyboard, mouse events, drag and drop events, media, progress. We can listen for like volume change. and we could do something. There are, and you can just keep scrolling, there are a ton of DOM events. And if you want to know what any of them do, you can just click in. The after print event is fired after the associated document has started printing or the print preview has been closed. Cool. Maybe you'd have a pop-up window that says, do you also want to email this to yourself? Something like that. We have access to all of these things. So the interesting thing, I think, in an event-driven architecture like this is these events are happening all the time, whether we're listening for them or not. You know that thing about, like, does a tree falling in the forest when no one's around make any noise? Does a DOM event happening on the web page when no one's listening to it still happen? Yeah, it absolutely does. All of this stuff happens all the time. This knows that my mouse pointer is over top of the body, but it's also over top of this H1. And all of the other, this one has focus now because I'm clicking on it. It's also been moused overed, mouse enter, now mouse leave. All of the events are happening all of the time. I like to think about it as like a chorus of people just screaming at the top of their lungs. Hey, the mouse pointer moved. Hey, it's pointing at me. Stuff like that. Hey, I got clicked on. And it's up to us to attach listeners. And if we don't attach any listeners, those events are just being yelled into the void. But they are absolutely happening all the time. Hundreds, if not thousands of events are firing every second. Okay? And we have access to these things. And, you know, usually we'll just do the, like, click and stuff like that, double click, focus, and things like that. How are we doing? 1042. Let's see what else we should talk about. Oh, the number on the left is the number of times the identical thing has been fired. Yeah. So if you had like a console log that said like clicked, clicked, clicked every time you clicked on a button, instead of printing click, 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 click all the way down the page, it will just show you the number of times that same exact thing has been outputted to the console. So somehow I was able to not move the mouse pointer at all, but still have the mouse pointer event fire and console log that I hadn't moved, which is weird because it's the mouse move event. But anyway, probably shouldn't have happened. It's probably rounding, is what I would guess, when you see multiple ones fire at the same time, because it can tell that the mouse is moving. Anyway, any other questions about what's going on here or the specifics of web page design? I have an ebook if you want to download it. It's called Chocolate and Salmon. Okay. So, what else do we have here? Intro to the DOM, and we looked at some DOM events. How are we doing? 1043. Browser events. We haven't yet looked. We did look at the event object, right? Let's see if we can look at some other events. Let's just refresh this page to get rid of all that. And let's do document dot get element by, let's use a new one. Query selector. And I bet we can pass that in H1. There we go. Okay, so now we've got that H1. And we can attach an event listener. How do we do that? Attach event listener DOM. Event target dot add event listener. Okay, target.add event listener. Let's try that out. h1.add event listener. Is that going to work? H1 is not defined, of course, because what didn't I do? Dot query selector. What if we do something that's not on the page? That makes sense, right? It's not on the page, so how are we able to grab it? Let's grab something that's actually on the page. Okay, we've got our welcome to the page, h1.add event listener. Ooh, very nice. So we see here that we have a function that takes in the type of the event, a listener, presumably a callback, and some kind of options object. So what event do we want to listen to? Maybe like mouse over? Actually, let's do click so we can see another type of event. Okay, so we're going to have a click event. And let's console log the event. And then let's, oh, I did it. Shift enter. There we go. And let's do everybody's favorite thing. Alerts. Is everybody familiar with alerts? Okay, so we have attached a click event listener. We added an event listener to this H1. So when I come up here, clear the console. H1 clicked. Oh yeah. If you ever want to annoy your users, alert everything. This is great. It's like console log, but for the browser. Okay. Hey, we got another mouse event. Very cool. It'll tell us what the path was. So we clicked on the H1, but by extension, we also clicked on the body, which by extension, we also clicked on the HTML, and by extension, we also clicked on the document, which is part of the window. So we can see that by clicking on the H1, we actually clicked on a whole bunch of stuff that's on the page. Okay, what else do we have? Return value. True, that's great. Hey, there's our X and Y again. Awesome. Was the shift key pressed? Ooh, I want to do this. Shift, click. Go away. I want to see if the shift key was pressed. Was it pressed? It was pressed. Yes, awesome. I can tell everyone is just floored by this. Okay, so pretty neat. I think anyway. Let's see. Remember console error? Remember we did console error and you asked me about what the differences of the different consoles are? Let's take a look in the browser, what we have access to. So I'm going to console error this DOM error object. Let's see what it looks like. Ooh, bright red text. Do you think that was because I console logged an error or because I console.error that error? Well, let's see. DOM error. Ooh, just got a regular console log. Okay, what if we do warn? Very cool, right? Colors, See, everyone likes developing client side. There's another one that I want to talk to you about, and to demonstrate it, I just learned about this like when I was prepping for the last time I gave this lecture. So there's another one that we very rarely use. So I'm going to console log the document. And here we see we've got the hash document. We're able to hover over it. We can see what's on the page. And if we drop it down, we see that we have the head and the body and everything else. And it looks a lot like our elements, right? Well, I'm going to introduce you to Google's on top of it. Console.dir. And I use this for one very specific reason. Let's go to MDN, the source for all things internet. The console method dir displays an interactive list of the properties of the specified JavaScript object. The output is represented as a hierarchical listing with disclosure triangles that let you see the contents of child objects. So I'm showing you this so that we can talk about disclosure triangles. Document. Okay, so we saw that console log. We saw it before that like console warn, it changed it to yellow, console error changed it to red. Let's see what console dir, let's see how it differentiates from console log. Okay, looks pretty familiar. But when I hit the disclosure triangle, yeah, did you know those had a name? I didn't know they had a name, and now I call them disclosure triangles. So when I assist you, I'm going to say, can you just hit that disclosure triangle, and we can see what's inside there? Okay, so we get to see the actual object itself. Here we were console logging, and it must be doing some kind of transformation. You know when you console log like an array or something, but use it in template literals, and it'll actually call toString on the array and output it? Something must be happening here where the document's like, yeah, I'm not going to really give you any useful information. I'm just going to show you the structure. Console.dir lets us see all of the things that we can set. Hey, there's that body. Child nodes, node list. It has an HTML node inside of it. Children, the domain URI. So it actually shows us. As a side note, does anyone know the difference between a URI and a URL? Also open to Calgary. Who can Google without me watching? Sorry? They are, oh, because you took the I and the L. Okay, so a URL, Universal Resource Locator, and a URI, Universal Resource Identifier. So all URLs are URIs. All of them are Uniform Resource Identifiers. URLs are a special type of URI that we refer to in the browser. So there'll be a different protocol. There'll be HTTP, HTTPS, something like that. Notice that since I loaded this from the file system, it's got a file protocol. So this uniform universal resource identifier points to the file. So that's really the only difference between them. All URLs are URIs, but not all URIs are URLs. Okay, it's a special subset. What else do we have in here? Full screen enabled, full screen false. Very cool. Awesome. So, and what did we learn about today? Disclosure triangles, right? That's the main takeaway from today. Okay, so how do we programmatically, close tabs to the right, there we go. Let's go to a page that everyone is probably familiar with, Wikipedia. Awesome, okay. And let's look at the random article. Okay, species of sea snail. Awesome. Oh, if I hover over that, oh, very cool. Probably not done with JavaScript at all. No, probably not. Random article, it absolutely is. Okay. A village in India, cool. Oktoberfest of Santa Cruz do Sul. Awesome. Okay, why am I doing this? Because I wanted to build up a history. Look at that. There's actually a history attached to this window, and it's 7 long. Okay, so, oh, also a lot of the window objects, you can just make reference to them without the window. Same way that like you can attach global things, global variables to like the global object in JavaScript, but we don't actually call global.name, global.age. We just have access to it. Same thing here. We can call window.history or history. Okay, so what can we do with this information? Ooh, back. Uh-huh. What do you think's going to happen? We navigated back to the Oktoberfest page. Okay, let's do that again. Ooh, history.back. Now we're back to the, is this the city in India? Yeah, village in India. Cool. History.forward. Awesome. This is, Nemo likes to say that this is how hackers use the internet. We're too good to click on things, and we can actually just navigate around. History.forward, history.back. Window.location equals Google. Sure enough, window.location does equal Google. So you can see how you could navigate your users around. You could move them backwards or forwards through your app. Tweeter, the app that you're building this week, is what's known as a single page application. So it virtualizes this forward and back. It actually adds them by just pushing into window.history. It adds elements in there so that you can navigate back and forth, because a single page application is exactly that. It's one page. There is no forward and back. There is no making additional requests or anything. Well, you'll learn tomorrow about how to make requests to the server without utilizing the browser's native resources. One of my favorite things, Ajax, but I don't get to give you that lecture, unfortunately. Cool. So we can navigate around. We can move our users. Maybe we could even, let's take a look at this random article button. What do you have? So there's an li called n random page. Okay. So const random equals document dot query selector n random page, and we want the anchor tag inside of that. You're gonna be satisfied? Cool. Random, null. Okay, we didn't actually get the right thing. We want n-random page. Let's just make sure that we can actually do this. Document dot get element by ID n random page. Got it. Okay, so now we've got the li, and we need to be able to click on this button. Get child element of DOM node. Child nodes. Hey, we already looked at that, right? But body dot child nodes. So let's, oh, wrong page, Oktoberfest. There we go. Okay, so we're going to say, let's grab this. Const li lit. That's right. Okay, so we've got our li, and we can look inside the child nodes, and we can see that we have 1. So let's say const a equals li child nodes at 0, and that's going to be a capital N. All right. A dot click. Neat. So we are actually able to grab an element and then click it as if a user had clicked it. And you remember Mocha and Chai? There are actually full JavaScript testing frameworks that will move around and click on your website as if it was a user to make sure that your buttons are actually working. It can actually type things into input fields and test them programmatically to see if everything is working. Cool. We can do that after the break. We'll get into how we include JS in the page. We'll move out of the browser here, and then we'll start talking about jQuery. So any questions before we go for coffee? Everybody good? Awesome. Calgary? Great. I'll see you in 10 minutes. All right. Pretty much everybody back? Awesome. So there's one thing, before we get into jQuery, there's one thing that I want to talk about because we've been typing all of our code in the web browser's console, right? So obviously that's not ideal. We want to be able to attach JavaScript to our page. So the way that we do that is extremely similar to the way you bring in your styles, right? So let's create a new file. Awesome. So we have a script.js, and just to make sure that everything's loaded, we'll use our friend the alert. And we bring it in using script tags. And if you see back in the old days, if you see some really old examples, you'll see that the type was text/JavaScript. This dates back to the time when there were more scripting styles than just JavaScript. JavaScript is the de facto scripting language for the browser. It's built into every browser, so you no longer have to say this is a type. It's like, it's a script tag. I know it's JavaScript. Okay, so all we need to do is pass a source. Cool. Let's refresh our page and see if we get an alert. Yes, I know you clicked. I know. Refresh. Loaded. There we go. But notice something interesting. The page has not loaded, right? Our CSS style was applied to the body, but let's take a look at where this is. Okay, so here it is in the head. What if we, say, moved it all the way down to be the very last thing that runs before the body closes? It's still happening pretty quickly. So as you can tell, well, it's not super obvious here yet, but it will be when we switch to jQuery, is the page is loaded from the top down. And it brings in things, so it comes down the page and it says, okay, I see a head. Okay, you have a title in there, set the title. Okay, moving down, oh, you have a style sheet. Okay, I need to import all of that style sheet. Then moves on and then says, okay, here's an H1 and a div. And then when it runs down to the script, it actually stops loading the page, jumps in and loads the script file, and then jumps back to whatever else is going on the page. Okay, so we'll deal with this in a second. Let's just move this back up to the top. So how did we, if we had two files, if we had, our information in another file in Node, we'd have to do something like module.exports equals, and then export this thing, right? And then inside of here, we'd have to do like require, and then specify the requirement, right? Not so for the browser. Let's make sure that we get rid of module.exports there. Okay, so not so for the browser. The browser will literally just bring everything in, and I like to think of it as just a giant stack, and it just keeps adding on to the top. So if you bring in this script, it's literally just keeps adding everything to the pile, all of the data that's on this page. It keeps loading it and loading it. So we don't have to do like a require. This is the equivalent of a require. And I want to show you something that may or may not blow your mind, but it's pivotal to what we have to do now. So in script, I'm saying I'm setting up a name variable and setting it to Andy. Awesome. So everything's working, nothing's going on. Presumably we have a name variable in here. Okay. Now what happens if I create a second script file and I console log name? What would happen in Node when this file gets run? Name is not defined. What happens in the browser when that file gets run? script2.js, line 1, printed Andy to the console. Where did name come from? Yes, exactly. So if you want to bring in another library, you want to bring it in before your script that utilizes it. Because if they're inverted, there is no name. There's nothing going on. But isn't that cool? We can just keep adding JavaScript to the browser, and we don't have to do any kind of special like const name equals require this other file and stuff like that. We just literally have access to the entire contents of that other file because it was loaded first. It was loaded before this one. So we have access to everything inside of it. And that's the way that JavaScript gets loaded into the browser. You can have 100 of these if you wanted, bringing in all kinds of different libraries and everything. And then at the end, you have your own script that runs and utilizes all of those libraries. Kind of cool, kind of interesting. This is how you're actually going to consume JavaScript in the browser. So if you understand what's happening here, when we bring in this script, everything gets loaded, then we bring in this script and it has access to all of the scripts that came before. Okay, that's pivotal to understanding what we're about to do with jQuery. Okay, so can we still, oh, it doesn't go backwards. No, it's only from the top down. So for Calgary, the question was, could we have something in this file that references this file? You can't use require in the browser. It just does not exist. That was entirely a Node thing for how to share files between. So this is how we handle it in the browser. Okay, awesome. So I think we're finally ready to talk about jQuery. Now the jQuery docs are fantastic. jQuery has been around for well over a decade now. And let's see, what is jQuery? It's a fast, small, feature-rich JavaScript library. It makes things like HTML document traversal. So in other words, what we had to do to grab that LI and then look inside the child nodes and then grab the child node and then click on the child node, it's going to be so much simpler with jQuery. Document traversal and manipulation. You can throw in DOM anywhere you see document because that's actually what we're doing. DOM traversal, if you're interested, means going from like here to here to here to here, going back up, finding the parent, finding a sibling of that parent, and this is what's known as traversing. We can traverse trees. So jQuery handles that for us. Document traversal and manipulation. Event handling, that might come in handy. Animation, also probably handy. And I don't like the fact that they don't have this capitalized because it's actually an acronym. And Ajax. Makes Ajax much simpler and with an easy-to-use API. We've heard this before, right? I like to harp on and on about abstraction, that we write abstraction layers as programmers. We write interfaces for other programmers to utilize or clients to utilize, and we also consume other programmers' interfaces. So they have wrapped all of the stuff that we had to do, like document.querySelector and stuff like that, in this easy-to-use API so that we can do in one line of code what could take 10 or 20 lines of code to do the old-fashioned way. Okay? That works across a multitude of browsers. That's actually jQuery's claim to fame. Have you ever seen like the WebKit prefix? Have you ever seen this anywhere and like prepending this onto like CSS and stuff? Back in the old days, the browsers were implementing their own stuff. They weren't as universally compliant as they are nowadays. So if you wanted something to happen in particular on Chrome, you'd have to prepend it with WebKit. If you wanted it to happen on Firefox, you prepend it with Mozilla. The Mozilla Developer Network. Okay. Internet Explorer was MS, stuff like that. jQuery took care of all of that. You would apply a style to something, and then it would automatically prefix it so that it would work in every single browser. So jQuery came on the scene and made all of this stuff super, super easy. And JavaScript developers grabbed hold of it and just went running with it. And it is one of the most popular libraries ever created. With a combination of versatility and extensibility, Extensibility means that we can extend onto it. We can add additional functionality to it. jQuery has changed the way that millions of people write JavaScript. And that is absolutely true. Okay. So, how do we get jQuery? jQuery CDN. Oh, there we go. Does everyone know what a CDN is? A content delivery network? It's a specialized web server that just serves up static files of commonly used packages and libraries. So rather than going to NPM to download a package or something like that, in the browser we have access to these content delivery networks where we can just link to code on that web server and make a GET request to it, and they'll give us back that file. So we don't have to download jQuery and host it locally and serve it to our clients and things like that. We can actually tell the client's browser, download jQuery before you use my site. And CDNs, the advantage to CDN is you can point to a specific version. You can update your version really quickly and easily without having to download files. There's also browser caching. Since we went to Wikipedia, and one of the awesome things about Wikipedia is jQuery is not defined. Really? Oh, because maybe we're not in the page? There we go. Let's try that again. jQuery. There we go. Apparently it's not on the initial page, but it is once you get inside. jQuery is loaded, more than likely from a CDN. And so if a user comes to our website and we utilize jQuery, the browser looks inside of its own cache and it says, did I already download this? Do I already know what jQuery is? Oh, great, I do. We can skip the step of downloading it again. We'll just use the one that we have cached, and your web page will load faster. Whereas if you were serving jQuery yourself, every single client would have to download jQuery from you as well as your web page. Okay? So CDNs, definitely the way to go. Nice, simple, easy to use. So let's take a look at jQuery 3.41. So it gives you a handy script tag to download, but I actually want to see what jQuery looks like. Ooh. Very cool. Ooh, starts with an iffy. Immediately invoked function expression. Anyway, we see a function that starts off. We see some ifs and some elses. We see a module exports. It's kind of weird. Document equals window.document. Pulling slice and concat and push. Did you know you can do this? You can pull the methods off of objects. So they pulled the slice method off of the array so that they can utilize it elsewhere. Index of, stuff like that. So declare a bunch of variables. jQuery.extend, jQuery.fn.extend. It's just JavaScript. This is what I was saying all the time when we pulled in packages. Do we need jQuery? No. Do you need any package in the browser? No. It's all just JavaScript. You could write this for yourself if you were so inclined. You could write your own abstraction layer for DOM manipulation. I think there's actually a website called Do You Need jQuery? You might not need jQuery. That's the thing. So it actually does side-by-side comparisons between if you wanted to do something with vanilla JavaScript and if you want to use it with jQuery. And you'll note that the ones on the left have far fewer lines of code. Make a request. This one is actually on par, but I mean, you could have written all of this on one line. It is effectively one line of code. Effects. Element.style.display equals none. So set this element style to display none. Or .hide. I bet there's a .show. .fade in. Ooh. Grab them, add the classes, add some custom CSS, or you could just call fade in. Show, opposite of hide. So you can look through this and you can see like how much easier jQuery makes our lives. Okay, I don't expect you to understand all of this right now. jQuery does an absolute ton of stuff. And since jQuery has been around for so long, there are multiple ways to do everything. We'll talk about this more in a second, but you can actually just copy this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my script. I'm going to get rid of this, and I'm going to console log jQuery. And then let's reload our page. Where were we? My page. Here we go. Uncut reference error. jQuery is not defined. Sounds good. Let's go into our index page and paste in all of that stuff that it gave us. First question. Do you need the cross origin equals anonymous? And do you need the SHA-256 integrity? No. You don't. The SHA-256 integrity is just for security purposes. If you actually wanted to check and see, did this jQuery library come from the real jQuery? You don't actually need any of that. All you need is the source. Okay, let's try this again. And, ooh, look at that. We were able to output jQuery. We now have the ability to use jQuery inside of our application. jQuery has an alias. What's the number one thing about devs? Lazy. We're lazy. It turns out that this was just too much to type out. So it's been shortened to $. So you'll see a lot of these examples, and this might have been slightly confusing, that $. Is a placeholder for jQuery. It's an alias for the jQuery library. Because, I don't know if you know this, but $sign is a valid variable name. Have you ever pulled in something like Lodash? If you did, you were able to utilize something like underscore map, something like that. You could bring in a library, and it just aliased everything into a simple, easy to type thing. So we can console log jQuery, $. So there's no magic going on here. This is simply an alias for jQuery. Anywhere you see a $, you could type jQuery. Anywhere you see jQuery, you could type a $. Okay? So try not to get too confused about that. It's simply an alias. Okay, so what can we do with it? What can we do with jQuery? Why don't we see if we can grab something from the DOM? So remember, I kind of talked about this and how we could select elements within the DOM. And then we looked at our DOM tree and we were able to say, okay, I want this div, it's got a class of content. And if we wanted to style that, we said div.content, or we could say .content, right? The reason why I spoke about this earlier is because jQuery uses CSS selectors. If you call jQuery or $, it's a method, you invoke it, and you pass it an argument. So we're passing it an argument that says div.content. jQuery only has one user interface. And what it does is you invoke it and you pass it an argument, and depending on what the argument is you passed in, jQuery will do different things. This particular one, we'll look at a bunch of different ones, but this particular one says, give me back whatever this is. So presumably, we can set this equal to a div, const div equals. Okay, and then let's console log that div. One thing that I'll talk about in a second, but let's see this not work. But not work in I think, a surprising way. So we're console logging, we're saying jQuery, grab this div. I'm telling you that this works because we can do like, and there we see we were able to grab our div, right? There it is with the dotted border. I love the dash border. I love that. Okay. It works, but we refresh the page. Length 0. But if I copy this in, Identifier div has already been declared. Wow, look at that. Oh, yeah, because it's in here. So let's do div2, let's say. We have access to div2. And there's our content right in there. What? jQuery div. jQuery div. Reading it from top to bottom, script ran before the page actually loaded. So it hit the head, loaded up our jQuery, then loaded up our script. The moment it hit this line, our script fired. So it said, okay, what do you want me to do? You declare a div. Initially, you set it to undefined, right? As all variables are. And then you're going to try and assign it a value. So you said jQuery, do some DOM traversal, and give me back a node that corresponds to div.content. And then console log that. And then go back to continue loading the page. So if this is all that our jQuery knows about, that our JavaScript knows about, there is no div with a class of content yet, because it literally has not been created. This, our DOM only has this part loaded so far. And so we tried to traverse the DOM and look for this div over here, and it went, is that it? Nope. Is that it? Nope. Okay, I'm done. Div is now undefined. And then it went back to running the code and loaded the rest of the page. So knowing that, how do we get around this problem? Declare them at the end. So let's move them all the way down to below that last div and try this again. Let's reload the page. Hey, look at that. And we're actually able to grab it. So if you notice that your jQuery is not, like your code is not actually grabbing the right thing, it keeps coming back as undefined or something like that, it's because it more than likely it was running when that element did not exist in the DOM yet. And so it came back as undefined. And imagine that we were grabbing like this UL and appending list items onto it, and we wanted to append a bunch of stuff. When it went to grab the UL, it was undefined. And then it continued on trying to append things to it. It would run without error, but absolutely nothing would happen because that UL did not exist at the time. So there's another solution to this as well. We can move our JavaScript all the way down to the bottom of the body, or inside of here, there's a special function. We can actually pass the document. Remember that document that we have access to in the browser? We can actually pass that to jQuery. And then we can say, when that document is ready, I want you to execute something. What is this? Callback. Yeah, exactly. So now, if we cut that and paste it into here, we are telling jQuery, don't do anything until the document is ready, until it has fully loaded all of its assets. So let's take these ones and move them all the way back up to where we had them. And refresh the page. And look at that. Even though our script is loaded at the top, we literally said, wait until the document is ready, then execute this callback function. It's kind of like a callback. It's more like if you had a route like app.get/, and then you started your web server, and then you went for coffee. Well, it's just sitting there waiting for someone to visit localhost 8000/, right? And when you ultimately do, when you come back and you've got your coffee, and you sit down, you take a sip, and you refresh your page, then that callback fires. So a callback is simply saying, like we talked about in week 1, day 4, this isn't going to happen now. It's going to happen when some precondition is met. So you can do either or, but I would recommend that you, yes. It actually attaches a callback listener. That's an excellent question. So the question for Calgary was, does the DOM actually fire that event when it's loaded? document has a special property on it called on ready state change. So what jQuery does is it actually logs our callback onto this on ready state change function. And so all of our code runs when the document is in a ready state, when it has changed. Presumably it has multiple states, so it would probably look through it and say, is it still loading? When it's ready, then run this callback. Okay, so that's how jQuery knows. Like I said, there's no magic going on. jQuery is literally just wrapping this API with a better API, a more extensible API. Cool. So we've seen that we can do either or here. How are we doing? 11:30. Awesome. Yes. So for Calgary, the question was, do we have to include all of the JavaScript we want to write inside of this callback function? That depends. You could, code that you want to execute has to execute inside of here. But if you had, let's say, a function called say hello, just for interest's sake, I don't know who would write this kind of function, but there we go. There it is. And then we're going to console.log name. There we go. We don't need to declare that inside of here, but we do need to invoke it inside of here. Does that make sense? We can register constants and variables and stuff like that, but if we expect to interact with the DOM, we have to wait till it's loaded. Okay? You can write helper functions. You could have other files that have helper functions or constants or something in them, but if you want something to run, put it inside of document.ready. Okay? So, one more thing that I'm going to say about this. I want you to ponder, well, that's a lot of Command Z's. Okay, I want you to ponder why I would recommend that you do both. Why I would recommend that you put your import scripts at the bottom of your body and you write a document ready function. While you're thinking about that, there is a shorthand for document ready. If you pass a function to jQuery, it says, oh, you mean document ready, right? And then it will just, you can just execute your code inside of here. This is equivalent to this, if you see it in documentation. Because jQuery has been around for so long, so many iterations, and people just got too lazy to type document.ready, so we just pass in arrow functions now. Same equivalent. So, same equivalent. There you go. I'm not an English lecturer. Okay, so why would I recommend that you do both? When you're at a red light, presumably everybody can drive or has been in a vehicle. You're at a red light, the light changes to green. Do you immediately slam on the gas? Do you immediately just slam on the gas and tunnel vision and be like, this is my lane, I'm going to rip through this intersection, it's my time to go? Or do you take a casual look to the left and the right, and you're like, is that truck going to stop? Okay, they did actually stop. I can drive now, right? That's what we call defensive driving, right? You look around at the other drivers, and you try your best to protect yourself, right? So, with that in mind, why would I recommend that you do this and this? When we've seen that you can do one or the other, and they'll be fine. I really need one of those drum rolls. Defensive coding. That's a term that I've coined. It's 25 cents every time you use it, but spread it around. Defensive coding, because you are not going to be a solo act. In 8 weeks when you graduate, as soon as you find a job, you're going to be a member of a team. And I really want to stress that. So your job might be to write the script for the front end, and a designer is doing all the HTML and CSS. If you don't do document.ready inside of here, you are making the assumption that your coworker has put all of the script tags at the bottom of the body. Conversely, if you're writing all of the HTML and designing the page or setting up the layout and the semantic markup, if you don't do this, if you put these in the head, you are making the assumption that your coworker has typed document.ready. So I would recommend that you defensively code and you always assume the other person is not going to do their job. Because just like every other industry, I'm sure you've all worked with people that you wouldn't trust to take the garbage out, right? So don't trust other people. Take the safe step. Do both, okay? You always want to protect yourself and make sure that it's not your code that's causing the production build to crash. As little as possible. As little as you can. It's still going to happen. Okay. Awesome. So where were we? Okay, so we've got our script. We're bringing everything in. Any other questions about this before we start manipulating our web page? Okay, cool. So what was one of the things that we did? We grabbed that H1, right? We grabbed that H1 and we attached a click listener that launched an alert, right? And that was, we did document query selector H1 and we did all that jazz. Okay, let's see how simple that is in jQuery. We know that it's a query selector. We know that it's like CSS style selector, so we can pass in an H1. And we can say const H1 equals that. And that's all we have to do. And now we have our H1. And then we can say H1.on, click. We get past an event. And it fires a callback. Let's console log this event to see what it looks like. And then we'll alert clicked. Does that seem a little easier than all of the add event lister and all the other stuff that we had to do? We can just call h1.on, the name of the event, and the callback function to fire in that event. Cool. So let's take a look at this. Refresh. I'll clear this. Clear that as well. And we'll click on this. Page says clicked. And we got a jQuery event. You remember before that we just had an event. So let's take a look at this jQuery event. Ooh. Remember bubbles? We talked about bubbles and, oh yeah, disclosure triangle. Okay. We talked about bubbles and cancelable and stuff like that. And, oh, look at this. Does this look familiar? A mouse event. This is our original event. This is the original DOM event that jQuery has actually wrapped on our behalf to extend its functionality. Because this looks pretty familiar. Hey, there's our X and our Y. Same thing we were console logging earlier. But it's all inside of this original event. The OG event, if you will. I'll submit a PR after we're done here. We got our page, X and Y. We have a bunch of different stuff. We have a target. And the target has child nodes and stuff like that. So jQuery wraps. It's not just the equivalent of calling document.querySelector, grab this thing. It actually wraps it in a bunch of extra functionality for us. And so I did something possibly a little weird here. What did I do that was weird that you may or may not have seen before? I declared the variable with a $sign in the front. This is actually a form of Hungarian notation. There we go. Thank you, Google. Hungarian notation is an identifier naming convention in computer programming in which the name of the variable indicates its intention or kind. So if you've seen in other programming languages, like in VBA, you might do something like var string, my string equals string, something like that, because it's a typed language. So you want all the other users of your program to know that that is a string that's contained in there. Maybe it was a Boolean value instead. You would want everyone who consumes your code to know how to use your code. What do these variables do? So we use Hungarian notation with jQuery elements because we want to say this is not just a regular variable. This is not just an object, an array, a primitive. This is a jQuery object. And we can do all kinds of crazy stuff with it. So we use Hungarian notation to denote that this is a jQuery variable. You can absolutely not do that if you don't want. It's your variable. You can name it however you want, but I recommend if it's a jQuery element, put the $, because then you remind yourself, oh yeah, this is a jQuery element. I can do things like append child and .on and stuff like that with it, which I can't do with a regular object. Okay? So we were able to replicate all of that code in a fairly simple thing, and we saw that we were actually given back the event which wraps the original event. Cool. Okay, so let's do something a little bit more fun, I think. Let's add an input field on here. Type equals text, ID equals new list item. Okay, so let's take a look at our web page now. Do we have everything saved? Save that and jump back to my page. We refresh. Yeah, I know you clicked. Yeah. Okay. Oh yes, the design is getting better. Let's throw a label on there. Label for equals new list item. Oh yes. Okay. So what did I not do that you're used to doing with input fields? Wrapping it in a form and giving it a name attribute, right? Because if we want to pass this along, rec.body, whatever, well, we are not actually going to use a form to submit this. We are going to listen for someone to type something into here, someone being me, and then we're going to want to add something to the page. But right now, press enter. We don't even have a button. Let's throw in a button. Type equals button. Oh yeah. Add. There we go. Okay, we are ready. So I want to, when I type something in here and click add, I want to add it to our list. Okay, that would be fairly cool, I think. So let's try that out. So what do we need to do to get that done? We want to grab the list, get the contents of the input field, create a new list item, append to list. Clear input field. Okay, we'll put this one down as a stretch goal. Okay, so up here, we want to grab this unordered list here. Easiest way, same way we would style it, probably grab the ID, right? It's right there. We know it's the only one on the page. That did not copy. Copy. Cool. Okay, so we know we have access to the list now. So let's call this our list. We grab the list. Great. Okay, get the contents of the input field. So our input field, we gave it an ID of new list item. Presumably we can grab that in the exact same way. There we go. Should we console log to make sure that we're progressing down the right path? Oh yeah. There we go. You always got to use the other ones when you can. Okay. Refresh. Hey. Oh, look at that, Warren. That looks great. Okay. So we are able to grab our UL. We see that we actually got something back. So we know jQuery worked correctly. And then down here, we see that, whoa, there's our input. Awesome. Cool. So we know that we're able to grab everything correctly. Let's move on. Now we need to create a new LI. There's jQuery again. So we saw that if you pass a function to jQuery, it interprets it as document.ready. If you pass in a string, it interprets it as a selector. If you want to create a new element, greater than less than. So the same way as if we were going to create a new element on the page. Now you could type something in here, like you could do it literally like this, but jQuery gives us some helper methods. So this here will create a brand new LI element. Okay, so we've got our new li, but we want to get the contents of the input field, right? So I bet input has some kind of value on there. It's not going to help us out. We actually call .val, and it gives us back. We can actually look at jQuery get input value. Ooh, .val. jQuery documentation is fantastic. I can't say that about many libraries that we use, but it is fantastic. Get the current value of the first element. Click on some random thing. Get the current value of the first element in the set of matched elements, or set the value of every matched element. Neat. They've overloaded the methods as well. If you call it with no arguments, it gives you back the value. If you call it with an argument, it sets the value. Let's see if this will work for us. If you wanted to pre-populate some fields, you could absolutely. Maybe you had a user settings page or something where you want to show them their email address and their regular address and everything, and they could type them in and change it, and then you submit that to the database. Great. We can pre-populate things. Awesome. So if you pass in any kind of value in here, sets the value. If you just call val, retrieves the value. So now we've got this input value, whatever was typed into that field, and we want to put it into this li. Back to jQuery. jQuery, set text of node. Ooh, .text. That sounds fun. Oh, look at that. They overloaded text as well. Okay, so if we just called .text, that would retrieve the text of this li. Has nothing in it right now. But we want to actually set the text of this li. We want to create an li, and we want to give it a text node, like we did before with when we looked at this. Where is it? There we go. These have text nodes on them. And remember, we did that with the copy and paste code. We added some text nodes. So this was water, I believe, during the example. Cool. Now we want to append to the list. Oh, I'm sure jQuery doesn't have something called append. Oh, it does. It actually has an append. And what append will do is insert content specified by the parameter to the end of the element. Okay, so we take our list and we call append. I don't know why I keep typing in lit. I have no idea why. But Freudian slip, I think. There we go. We grabbed our list. We grabbed the input. We got the value from the input. We created a brand new list item. So right now, if we're looking at the DOM, our list item is floating out here somewhere. It's not actually part of the DOM. We've created an li out here that has some value in it, some text, whatever was typed into that form. Then we want to grab this list and append this li onto this list. And since we're going to append it, it will show up as the last child. Is it already? Oh, not yet. Okay, so let's check out and see if our page is working. We'll refresh. Oh, hey, check it out. We got a blank one already. Interesting. Huh. What did we forget to do? It happens on page load. Exactly. All of this stuff fired as soon as the page loaded up. This came back as undefined. It created a brand new list item and inserted it. That's not what we want, right? We want to grab that button. So we called the button. Oh, we didn't give it an ID. How are we going to get it? Sure, let's try it out. So we have div.content space button. That would work for our styles, right? So presumably this will give us back our button. And we could do on click, but jQuery has been around for a while. There's actually a .click. And if you're wondering why you still have access to this, even though they have updated their code to accept this instead, backwards compatibility. There are websites that are still using .on and specifying the event name in here. So if they said, no, going forward, you will all use .click, all of those websites would break. So that's why jQuery gives you a ton of different ways to do the exact same thing. So we're going to use this .click syntax instead of saying .onClick. And we're going to register a click handler inside of here. And then we're going to take all of this code and paste it inside. There we go. And if we get to it, let's clear that input field. Okay, so let's see if this happens now. So it's only going to fire on that button click. Refresh. Okay, we don't have anything on there. Let's put in water. Hey, that worked. What else could we add? Bananas. There we go. It's being added to the bottom of the list, being appended. There is also a prepend. Just like prefix. Let's reload. Let's type in water and hit add. It prepended it to the list. It made it the first child instead of the last child. And what did we have next? Bananas. Add. There we go. Prepend it onto there. So we're able to do all of this without having to refresh the browser, send requests to the server. We're able to dynamically manipulate the web page. And this is exactly what JavaScript was designed to do. Okay. What else? We could set the style. We could add or remove classes. Like, let's say you decide that you don't want this on here anymore whenever somebody hits the button. Well, let's grab our div.content and let's say remove class content. Okay, refresh the page. We add a new item. We click add. And now our border's gone because we actually removed that class from. So there's remove class, there's add class, and there's toggle class. Oh, let's see what this does. Okay, first item, water, class is gone. Next item, bananas, add. Ooh, the class did not come back. Interesting. I'm not 100% on why the class did not come back. It should have toggled. But you can add and remove classes dynamically. Okay. What else can we do? So you can obviously attach styles to different elements. You can listen for various different events happening. .click, stuff like that. Let's see if we have any other examples that I want to give you. Creating elements and appending to the DOM and event handling. That's pretty much it in a nutshell. If you, oh, you know what we should do is tackle this last one. Based on what you know right now, how do we clear the list? How do we clear the input field? We've already got access to it with $input. Remember what we said about value? Yeah. So if you pass an argument to val, it will set that. Remember we set it to hello world? So if I say input dot val empty string. Okay, so let's refresh, water, add, and now it's back to that. Almost there. But wouldn't it be nice if it also put the cursor in there so I could just type something in, hit OK, and then just continue typing things in? Wouldn't that be fun? Dot focus. So we're saying in this input field, set the value to empty string, and then give it focus. Let's see what happens now. Water, add. Oh, nice. Heat, add. Oh, we're on it now. Bananas, add. Oh, yes. We'd have to add a listener for enter, for key down, in order to actually have that listen. The other thing we could do is wrap it in a form and just intercept the forms submission event. And you'll be doing that later on in Tweeter. You'll actually use jQuery to submit your forms instead. But the only reason to do that is Ajax. And you won't learn about Ajax until tomorrow. But it's a ton of fun. It's the reason why the web is the way it is now. So, any questions about? We are at 11:56. I'll send these notes out as soon as I can. You're going to get a lot of experience with manipulating the DOM, creating new elements, and appending them. Listening for different events to happen, listening for form submissions, stuff like that. You'll get a ton of experience this week dealing with jQuery. So any questions specific to this lecture? Anything? Calgary? All good? Everybody excited to start creating things you can show your friends and family? Yeah. Awesome. Okay. If you think of anything, I'm here all day. Otherwise, thank you very much for your time. Thank you, Calgary. See you in a little while.